The Allied forces won many battles during World War II. If I were to ask you who contributed to the success of these battles, you might say the soldiers did. But there was one small group of men who were sometimes overlooked. These are the leaders of the Allied forces, which are considered some of the greatest leaders of all time. This small group of men include Franklin D. Roosevelt, Winston Churchill, and Joseph Stalin. Sadly, we usually do not know much about these men other than their name. But in this speech, I will inform you about these men by telling a short story about each of them. We will start with Franklin D. Roosevelt, then Winston Churchill, and finally, Joseph Stalin. Maybe, after learning the short story surrounding these men, we can even learn a little about ourselves. According to MillerCenter.org, Franklin Roosevelt was born in Hyde Park, New York, on January 30th, 1882, with a family of considerable wealth and power. When Franklin was 14, he attended Groton School. In 1900, Franklin moved on to Harvard College, and he began to pay attention to girls, particularly his distant cousin, Anna Eleanor Roosevelt. They soon fell deeply in love with each other and married in 1905, shortly after Franklin began attending law school in Columbia. However, Franklin cared little for law, and his attention was soon drawn towards politics. He ran successfully for the New York State Senate, and in 1912, Franklin ran for Senate again and was reelected. But he would not be able to finish his term, as in 1913, he would join the Wilson administration as the Assistant Secretary of the Navy. According to MillerCenter.org, Franklin was praised for his efforts, and the leaders of the Democratic Party named him its vice presidential candidate in 1920. Although the ticket of James Cox and FDR lost, Franklin's future seemed bright. Sadly, tragedy struck, and Franklin contracted polio, which left his legs paralyzed. And he wouldn't be able to recover until 1928, when he made a comeback as New York's governor. During his term, however, the stock market had recently crashed, so he had to spend time mending the economic blows in New York. To do this, he initiated many relief and recovery initiatives. Franklin's efforts soon won him a re-election in 1930. By the presidential election of the season of 1932, the Great Depression had only worsened, so the Democrats turned to Franklin. By promising a New Deal for the American people, he won the election by a landslide and quickly became president. According to MillerCenter.org, the New Deal helped with economic factors of America, such as reforming banking and financial sectors, and even the direct cash relief for the poor. Sadly, Franklin's actions could not end the Great Depression. When World War II struck, Franklin never minded the Axis forces, as they only wanted to conquer Europe and Asia. However, after the attack on Pearl Harbor, the U.S. had officially joined the Allied forces. FDR proved a talented wartime leader, and by 1943, the United States military, along with its allies, had turned the tide against the Axis forces. Sadly, Franklin would never see the end of World War II, as in April of 1945, just weeks before the German surrender, the president collapsed and died of cerebral hemorrhage. Next is Winston Churchill, the leader of the British forces in World War II. According to History.com, Winston was born on November 30th, 1874, in Blenheim Palace, United Kingdom. As a child, he did poor in school, and because of this, he never attempted to apply to Oxford or Cambridge. However, Winston showed fascination in the military and soon joined the Royal Military Academy, Sandhurst. After he left Sandhurst, he traveled Britain as a soldier and a journalist. He traveled to places such as Cuba, Afghanistan, and even Egypt. He was even known for being captured by enemy forces and escaping them from a bathroom window. In 1900, Winston joined the House of Commons and worked on behalf of progressive social reforms, such as 8-hour workdays and mandated minimum wage. In 1911, he became the first Lord of Admiralty. Noting the Germans became more aggressive, Winston prepared Great Britain for war. Despite the preparation, World War I started as a stalemate, and Winston decided to fix this by proposing a military campaign, which ended up in disaster, and Winston soon left the Admiralty. According to History.com, he rejoined the House of Commons. During this time, he warned his fellow Britons about the German threat, but the people paid no attention to him. The British even gave the Germans a small part of Czechoslovakia in exchange for peace. However, Germany broke their promise and invaded Poland, and in May of 1940, Winston was appointed to the position of Prime Minister. According to History.com, Churchill began to prepare Britain for war as he expected many hardships to occur, and he was correct when on June of 1940, Germany sent out a series of devastating air raids on Britain. Churchill saw a grim future, but he tried to maintain the hope of his people and soon reached out to the United States for supplies, which allowed the Britain to push the Germans back on October 31st, 1940. Sadly, only 2 months after the surrender of the Germans, Winston was pushed out of office. For several years after World War II, Winston warned the people about Soviet expansionism, and in 1951, he was re-elected as Prime Minister, and in 1955, he resigned from his post. Sadly, in 1965, Winston Churchill died of a stroke in his London home. Finally is Joseph Stalin, who was the leader of the Red Army during World War II. According to History.com, Joseph was born on December 18, 1878, in a small town of Gorey, Georgia. He lived in a very poor family where he was abused by his father. As a teen, he received a scholarship to go study for the priesthood in the Georgian Orthodox Church. While there, he began secretly reading the works of Karl Marx, and Joseph began to be interested in the revolutionary movement against the Russian monarch. In 1899, he was expelled from the seminary for missing exams, which he claimed it was for Marxist propaganda. After leaving school, he joined a Marxist social democratic movement, or the Bolsheviks, led by Vladimir Lenin. He was soon caught and subjected to imprisonment and exile to Siberia in 1930. According to History.com, Joseph Stalin soon returned, and the Bolsheviks overtook the government. And the Soviet Union was formed in 1892 with its first leader, Vladimir Lenin. During this time, Joseph was appointed as the Secretary General of the Communist Party, which allowed him to grow political support. Soon after the death of Lenin in 1924, Joseph succeeded Lenin and became Russia's leader. After Joseph was appointed, he launched a series of 5-year plans to turn Russia into an industrial superpower. His plan forced government control of the economy and the farms. Many people who refused to cooperate were either exiled or killed. According to History.com, at the beginning of World War II, Joseph and Hitler signed a non-aggression pact, but that was shortly broken after Germany decided to invade the USSR in August of 1942. These two armies spent months fighting each other. Soon, on February of 1943, the Red Army drove the Germans out of Russia, and Joseph soon joined the Allied forces. Although Joseph got older, he never showed any mercy, as he established communist governments in Eastern Europe, and even gave North Korea's leader permission to invade South Korea, which would soon lead to the Korean War. Soon, on March 5th, 1974, Joseph suffered a stroke and died. In conclusion, from Franklin D. Roosevelt to Joseph Stalin, all these men had extremely varied backstories that all led to a similar path in life. They should be remembered, not for how glorious or terrible their leadership was, but their accomplishments in life. After learning about these leaders, it shows us that no matter who you are or where you come from, you can do anything as long as you set your mind to it.